Okay, look. If the buyer has no control over the vendor, does the vendor have any control over the buyer? Okay, now, logic tells you that the high performers operate in which quadrant? The top. Okay. They look at things from beginning to end. They identify things that they don't control as risk. They then identify what their assumption is on how that risk will be mitigated or controlled. That deals with someone else. We buy their plan. That is what we call utilizing expertise. So we ask the expert, what do they see from beginning to end? We take their plan. Everybody else looks at what they have to do now. And the assumptions are made by the vendor in his plan of how everybody is supposed to act, even if he doesn't control them. Here's my question. If the buyer can't control the vendor, and the vendor can't control the buyer, how does the vendor, the expert vendor, minimize or mitigate risk? An expert who's the best value guy, does he maximize his scope or minimize his scope? Minimize. So he's minimizing his risk down to what? Nothing. So we're buying in expert services who actually gives us a smaller scope but no risk. Correct? So he doesn't have any risk. All the risk is problems that he can't control. Does that make sense? So I'm saying, if he doesn't have any influence or control over the buyer, how does he minimize the risk? What's the answer here? He must create something. It starts with a T. No. He must create transparency, where something becomes so dominant that even if somebody's totally blind in transparency, they can see that it's their fault, so they'll go and do it. But he has no control over them. So he has to create transparency.